Hi, I'm David Lee Goodman. I'm a real estate agent, a property manager, and a property investor. And today I've got Josh Jones with me. How are you, sir?
Doing well, sir. Thank you for asking.
Yeah, I loved our discussion. I brought you back. We had you back in November. We talked about the Nashville market back then, and like it's kind of like we were a few months in with the interest rates being really high, and I don't know if we anticipated now April 20th, 2023 that we would basically be in the same exact position. We just kind of like have gotten used to it.
I feel like there's less fear in the market now. That there was so much more fear at the end of 2022 compared to now.
We've kind of reset.
Yeah,
right?
exactly.
And so I think that's what we're seeing. So in today's, I guess, discussion, we spoke specifically about Nashville and our numbers, and I even compared it to Austin, which I always think we're similar to.
Right.
I kind of look to Austin for kind of what is to come, and actually we're doing a lot differently than Austin right now. And then we also talked about primary home buyers versus investment buyers, kind of what's going on the lending side, what is factoring into people's decisions, and what are they able to afford, and how is that playing out in the market.
Right.
And then we talked about just different strategies to make investments work. So it was a very good discussion. I'm sure we left out a lot of stuff, but we do hope to bring more of this kind of content here in the future. So for now, we'll just get right to it. So now it's April 2023, and interest rates are basically the exact same as they were in November. Right. So we're floating in the 6.5 to between 6.5, 7.5. Like they've kind of gone a little bit up and down. This is for primary.
Been like this. They've literally,
but they stayed right around that since November. Did you think that was going to be the case?
Not necessarily. I think we're lower now than we were in November, but I will say I'm slightly lower. I will say I'm surprised. After some of the inflation reports we've got recently, that we're not lower than we are right now.
Okay, so talk about inflation reports. I think we talked about that last time too.
Some of it.
How it relates to where interest rates are at.
There's a big misconception that when the Federal Reserve raises rates that they affect mortgage interest rates. They do loosely. They affect adjustable rate mortgages. They affect HELOCs, but they don't affect a 15-year fixed mortgage or a 30-year fixed mortgage. But what they do affect is what investors do. And investors are the ones who buy what they call mortgage-backed securities. And that is where, to explain it simply, you get put 100 mortgages at 6% interest rate in a bucket, and they sell it to an investor who buys that and is going to get 6% interest for the next 30 years. But right now, Treasury yields are government bonds that are considered the most safest asset you can invest in. You can get a 2-month Treasury bill get close to 4% on it. So why would an investor wait 30 years to get 5.5%, 6% interest when he can buy a 2-month Treasury yield and get 4.5% to 5%? So they're not buying mortgage-backed securities like they were. So rates are kind of staying flat because they're not being bought like they were.
Yeah. So, I mean, I guess the important thing that I'm kind of realizing is between November and now April, they've basically been hovering around the same between 6 and, I mean,
They'll go up, down, up,
there's
down,
been a 6
down.
or a 7 there since that time frame.
Exactly.
So, and historically people talk about it's been even higher, but I mean the prices are kind of really, really high, right?
Really high.
So
that's what makes it hard.
You would see strain in different markets, especially markets that have inflated a lot. And so I've seen recently talk about what's going on in Austin, Texas, and I compare Nashville to Austin a lot because we're a similar kind of state, you know, where we have benefits. We have some of the similar benefits of Austin. We have an entertainment economy. A lot of people want to move here. We're a red state, but a blue city kind of thing. Like a lot of similarities, and I think we're 5 or 10 years behind. But in Austin, the appreciation just exploded. And they were one of the highest appreciating markets during COVID than anywhere else. And they have seen more of a correction than most other. There's some places out west too that have seen that. And so I was a little bit surprised to see how much they've corrected. Like
Gone
they're
down.
gone down in price
And
because
what's Nashville done in the past year? Is it going up or down?
it's gone up
How much?
5%.
Yeah, wow.
Yeah. So like,
Okay.
so that's what I was kind of getting at. It's like Austin has been like we've been like the little brother to Austin to me
Right.
whenever I describe our city.
Right.
And we've year over year, if you look at Redfin, which I'm going to bring this up now so you can use this. So Redfin over the last year for a single family home, the median sales price has gone up 5%. What we're saying is that it's flattening out here. We're not
Right.
seeing a dramatic drop. And just for fun, let's see where Austin is on this same graph, just to kind of look at this. So in the last year, year over year, the median sales price has dropped 17%.
But we're at 5% for the year.
And
in
we're
Nashville.
up 5% here. Correct. Exactly. I mean, that's a big deal. But I think that just goes to show like
That's higher than the average from
Right.
From 1989 to 2019. The average appreciation of a home was 3.89%.
Right. So year over year, nationally, nationally year over year, the appreciation prices in the country are 3 to 4% over 10 years, and we're still right there in a national average. Year over year, we're 5% increase. So right at average. So that's kind of encouraging to see.
Very encouraging.
Yeah, I mean, what was happening prior to now was rapid appreciation, 20-30%, and it was very, very difficult for normal people to buy a house, which is
It was unsustainable.
right. It's not cool. Like, but where we're at right now is actually, from what I'm seeing,
Normal
on
market.
par with what you would hope for, and it's because our interest rates are where they're at. So I just find that really interesting. I don't know what that says about Nashville versus Austin, because I still think, I think if you look at trends in Austin, like things still look very good over time. They're just having a really big correction because they had a really big upswing. So I think overall Austin's a great market, but I think if you're an investor in the Austin market, or if you're someone who can't afford Austin anymore,
Right.
maybe, I mean, I think Nashville is just a very similar in many ways. That makes it's a beautiful place to be. It's a booming city. It's growing like crazy. And now we're experiencing just kind of like normal growth
Right.
rather than versus a 17% drop. I
Right.
mean, no offense to Austin, I'm from Texas, but I will say that's pretty cool for our market.
Right. And especially after we've basically had 2 years of 20% appreciation, that people were so worried we were going to have a housing collapse. In Nashville, we're still appreciating at 5%.
Right. And I think if you look at Austin specifically, I've seen a podcast on this recently about digging into Austin specifically about why it really has to do with inventory versus demand. So let's look at some real numbers at the peak of our market, like back in March of last year versus where we're at right now. So in March of 2022, total inventory was 3685. That's the total homes that were available to buy, versus today, the total homes available to buy are 8,000. So there's a lot more property that buyers have access
I'll tell
to.
you something I noticed. The closings aren't that much off, though. Go back up to
Okay,
those
so
closings last year.
and that's a very good point. So back in 2022, closings were 3,800 versus closings now about 3,000.
So people are still buying.
So yeah, we have about 800 less closings every month, year over year. And I want to look at also like days on market. So days on market right now are 54 versus then 25, which I'm really surprised about that. I thought that those days
Really
on
lower.
market were even less. With that being said, like what are your like looking at these numbers, how do you interpret that? And then I'll tell you what I think.
I mean, I just interpret it kind of like you said earlier, the higher interest rates. I mean, it's just making it harder for the average investor because, there's certain things if you can get a cheaper homeowner's and insurance quote, there's different things you can do to make your home price cheaper per month. When it comes to interest rates, you cannot change that. So, like, what that's telling me is like when interest rates started jumping last year, it started in January and just continued on throughout the year because of economic factors that were a war and everything else, inflation. There's so many things that contributed to it. What that tells me is that it became harder for the average person to buy a home because if you have 2 years of almost 20% appreciation and then interest rates literally doubling in months, it makes it harder for the average person to buy a home. So
Right.
that's how I interpret that. But I'm still amazed that we're only 800 down on closings right now. That just tells me the market's still moving really
Right. So,
fast.
and I think, but here's the big factor is we're at 54 days on the market, which I think historically is not a ridiculous number. Now, you know, I've had my license, right around pre-COVID and on, and so 54 is like, geez, that's a really long time. I bought my first investment property in 2014, and I know any of the houses I was looking at that time were over 100 days on the market. So I know historically 54 is not a long time. But I mean, the way I'm interpreting this is with more days on market, we've got more inventory because those houses are staying on the market longer. So we do have almost double the houses like from last year to this year
Right.
in terms of what's available, which is, great for a buyer who wants to go like find the perfect house.
That's what I
But
would say.
unfortunately, what's not great for the buyer is like they may not be able to afford the same house. So it's like it's still very
Catch
it's kind of a mixed bag still.
That's what I was about to say. It's I'm personally looking for an investment property myself right now because I think
Well, I know a good
like
real
like you
estate agent.
real estate agent. Like you said, it's making it harder for people to buy, but kind of also to what go off what you said earlier, how hard it was to win an offer back in
Yeah.
20, like it gives you time to actually run as an investor to run the numbers,
Oh my
make sure it
god.
makes sense, and gives you time to think about
Yeah.
it instead of like, oh, I can't even get an appraisal to buy this house. You know what I
Right, and
mean?
I wasn't doing a lot of as far as the investment side in the last 6 months, I have honestly we were not really looking at small multifamily
Right.
properties. I've talked about this on here before, and now right now it's a perfect time to look
Hmm.
at small multifamily properties. And the reason for that, which I think I want to get your take on this. It seems like right now interest rates are getting seem like they're getting a little bit better for primary home buyers
They are.
versus what an investor is able to get with their loan. It is rough
It's
for
drastic.
investments,
Drastic difference.
right? So tell us like real quick, very quickly, because we're running out of time. What's the difference between an investor loan right now versus a primary home buyer loan? Because I don't want to scare investors away.
So
Like,
this is something you can Google. Like it's not easy to explain. They have what's called loan level price adjustments, and what that means is you get a hit automatically to your interest rate when whoever the lender is goes to look at rates. So what they did in 2020 was put these loan level price adjustments in there to try to slow down investors from buying up all the properties available. Well, what they did was started paying cash instead, and those loan level price adjustments are still in place. So when the average investor, you and me, an average guy, go to buy a house, we're looking at way higher interest rates because there's loan level price adjustments. Let's say the normal interest rate today is 7% for an investment property. It's probably going to be 8.5%, and
yeah,
you've got to put down more, 20 to 25% more.
right.
So I mean, it's a
So
vast
I mean,
difference.
it's unfortunate. It is tougher to get to
Yes,
get an investment loan right now. The other side of that is
there's
there's
hacks.
a lot more duplexes, triplexes, and quadplexes that are available
Talk about
to.
the FHA one we just did.
Well, yeah,
3.5%
yeah.
down.
So I was gonna say, like, house hackers, people who are like getting a primary home. I was never saying to look for duplexes, triplexes, or quadplexes because you couldn't get them. Like
Right.
I was saying, get into a basement single family house, you have a better chance. Now that since there's less investors who are
Mhm.
willing to put their money out there because the numbers may not make as much sense,
Sense.
like unless you have a good realtor like myself. Um, home house hackers have opportunity to find duplexes, triplexes where they couldn't buy those before. They weren't available to a normal house buyer. right? And they have better terms compared to investment loan. I'm not saying you shouldn't invest if you're just an investor here. Like there's strategies around it, but specifically for people who are getting a primary home loan, you have a lot more options when it comes to that. You can buy a duplex now. You can buy a triplex.
Yeah.
Those can be available to you. I mean, they're still being bought up quickly, but there's a little less competition for them at the moment.
This is where I'll brag on David for a minute. So we did a deal recently. Guy, first time investors, did it as primary residence. He bought a 2-unit property that he's converting into a 3-unit property. But so there's always hacks, like I said, and that's David's specialty. I'll give him that. So this guy put down 3.5%, doing an FHA deal. And he's able to rent 2 places out. Basically, other people are going to pay his mortgage for him, and that you couldn't do that. Even with these interest rates, and you couldn't do that a couple years ago.
Yeah, and in Nashville, unfortunately or fortunately, rents have still gone up. Yeah. They've kind of gone down a little bit,
but they're still staying at the same kind of spot.
Right. Yeah. So I mean, it makes the most sense for anyone, for any strategy. I mean, house hacking is the strategy that makes the most sense in most cases, especially in an appreciating market. So great insight, Josh. That's perfect. That was wonderful. Thank you again for being on.
Of course. Thank you for having me. Always a pleasure.
I think moving forward, we talked a little bit about specific numbers in Nashville, and I think, Josh and I were just talking today, like, man, we wish that there was something like this there's a lot of national videos that are done probably better than what we're doing, but we were like, we wish there was something in Nashville, and I'm like, dude, we just need to provide that.
So all the statistics are national averages, they're not Nashville averages.
Right. Yeah. So we're gonna commit to trying to put that information for whoever wants to look at it local to our market. Thanks for watching, Josh. Thanks for getting on here.
Of course.
If you guys have anything specifically you want to hear about that has to do with the national market, or have any questions for Josh as it relates to lending, how do people get a hold of you?
Look me up on Google. I work for Motto Mortgage in downtown Nashville. I mean, I'm on Google, so just look up Josh Jones, Motto Mortgage. You will find me there.
Yeah, Josh Jones, lender, Nashville, or just call me.
I've got 38 5-star
I've got an email address.
You just type in my name.
Yeah, you can reach me at david@dlgoodmanproperties.com, or go to my website, dlgoodmanproperties.com. Again, thanks again for watching. We'll see you next time.